We are now looking at 7 forces of system organization. As we have explained previously, the web of the biomatrix consists of 2 types of systems: string-like activity systems and knot-like entity systems. These activity and entity systems are organized according to 7 forces of organization. The same 7 forces determine the form and function of activity systems as well as entity systems. And the 7 are the following. So if we're looking at a system, what are its 7 forces? The first force is the substance of the system, or meta-energy information. So every system consists of meta-energy information. These normally interact with each other within the system, and they are influencing the system. So for example, if we have a house that exists, then it's a physical thing which unfolded according to the information inherent in the plan. If we look at a house on a plan, it is also a house, but the substance is an information substance. So different substances give rise to different types of systems. We can also look at an organization where we normally speak of resources to denote the substance of the system. As we change resources, the system changes. As we get new staff in, or maybe a new IT system or a new production system, we are changing the substance of the system and the system changes. Likewise, when we're wanting to produce health in our body and we are making all those lifestyle changes that eliminate toxic and unhealthy food, the substance of our body is changing and we become a different system than what we were. The second force of organization is the environment. We have already talked about that before, how opportunities or threats in the environment, both outer and inner environment, affect the system, and how the system changes as it responds to those environmental changes, as we tap opportunities, as we tap the information of threats and strategize to do something about them. So the more the environment changes and the faster the environment changes, the quicker the system has to also change itself to adapt itself to that new environment and take advantages of opportunities in that new environment. So the environment is an important force of organization. If an environment changes and the system is not changing accordingly, it is very well possible that the system will not survive. The third force of organization is the ethos. We already have discussed the ethos previously and defined it as the field of information, in other words, that force that puts form into the system, and it is that force according to which the system unfolds its form and function. I've given the example of the DNA previously, how the DNA informs the unfolding of the body, as we now know, in interaction with environmental changes. In an organization and in society, the ethos is called culture. In individuals, it is sometimes referred to as character. In systems of nature, the ethos is described by the laws of nature. And in technological systems, the ethos is embedded in the design of the technology, which is produced according to the ethos or the design. The fourth force of organization is aims. Aims is defined as what the system wants to achieve as an outcome. In organizations, we typically talk vision, mission, goals, strategies, objectives. Likewise, in personal life, we talk about goals. In nature, we observe preferable outcomes that systems achieve, and we call those aims in the widest sense of the word. Aims are a very important force of organization in a system, because if I'm putting a new aim out in my life or organization, I'm changing different parts of the system to make sure, and the behavior of the system to make sure that those aims are being achieved. The next force of organization is process. We define process as flow of matter-energy information. To give the analogy of the water, if I see a river, I observe flow. If I look at a pond, it is stable. There's no flow. So process defines flow. As soon as a system is alive, there is flow of one way or another. If there is no flow somewhere in the system, then the system is not alive. What also happens in process is we are observing how input substance comes into the process, is being processed, in other words, worked on, and comes out as outcomes, actual products, typically involving a transformation of matter energy information. So I take the ingredients of the cake, as we already discussed previously. They are being processed, so there's a flow of those substances, and then there is a transformed output, which is called the cake. Every system has structure. The structure determines the form of the system. If the system wouldn't have structure, we wouldn't be able to see it, perceive it. Structure is defined as matter-energy information configuration. In other words, it's a configuration of substance in time and space. It's a particular configuration of matter that makes up this mouse or the table or me as a person. Structure is observed in a thing. It's the form that the substance takes, and that makes it distinguishable as a specific thing. Or structure can be an action pattern, frequency pattern, for example, a repetitive behavior. It can also refer to observing things arranged in time and space, like the tools in my kitchen before I start baking the cake. So structure is an important organizing force. It is almost passive governance, because according to structure, process flows. Structure is like the riverbed which channels the flow of process, the flow of the water. So process and structure are very closely interlinked. And very often, if systems malfunction, we are restructuring them, certainly in the context of an organization, or we restructure our life. That means we are changing the pattern of what we do and how we do it. And the seventh force of organization is governance. Governance typically refers to the force that sets aims, the decision maker, or the decision-making process in the system. It's also the force that regulates, that monitors, evaluates, makes changes, plans, etc. That is all what we mean by governance. And as we change the governance of a system, obviously all behavior and outcomes of functioning of the system changes as well. These seven forces intimately interlink and interact. As we change one of the seven forces, the other forces are affected and change also, so they are driving continuously the unfolding of the system into the future. Now, we have said that activity and entity systems are organized by the same forces of organization. That is so, all 7 forces, as I outlined now, determine an activity system, and they also determine the form and function of an entity system. Having said that, we have to understand that the 7 forces affect entity and activity systems in different ways. And if I analyze and design or redesign entity and activity systems, one uses the 7 forces in different ways. There's a different emphasis and there are different methodologies that are associated with how we are applying those 7 forces and what they mean in the context of these different systems.